This is a great plan. I actually think it will get even better. And this is, make no mistake, this is a repeal and a replace of Obamacare. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake.
President Trump in the Rose Garden this afternoon celebrating House passage of a new health care plan with some of the House Republicans who narrowly put the measure over the top. Time to bring in our panel. Charles Lane of the Washington Post, Mercedes Schlapp from the Washington Times, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Well, let's run down some of the key elements that the House passed with all of the changes in the last 2 weeks, because this has been come out in a series of steps. The bill the House passed would repeal most Obamacare taxes, including the penalty for not buying insurance. It replaces subsidies with tax credits based on age, cuts more than $880 billion from expanded Medicaid, lets states get waivers to charge older customers more, lets states get waivers from coverage mandates, and it provides $8 billion more to help states finance high-risk pools for people with pre-existing conditions. Mercedes, this is being talked about a lot in terms of a political victory for President Trump and a political victory for Speaker Ryan, but is it good legislation? What is this going to mean if this were to pass the Senate? Well, for people that need health care.
Sure. Well, it's better legislation than what we have now with Obamacare. I mean, just in my state of Virginia, you're seeing that 47 out of 67 counties now will only have one insurance provider that they can go to. So I think, Chris, for what we're dealing with, it's not perfect in the conservative sense. It doesn't necessarily, solve all the ailments that come with Obamacare, but it is a step in the right direction in dealing with, for example, ensuring that you have these tax credits, the fact that there is this flexibility for states to deal with. The bigger question will be, how will the Republicans be able to sell this message? Think about it. Next week is this one-week recess. These congressmen are going to have a earful from their constituents. I was talking to one chief of staff who literally told me they had to leave the office because the phone was ringing off the hook. It is about selling now this package to the American people, and the Republicans own it. As
a conservative, what's your biggest objection? What doesn't go far enough?
Well, I think that there is concerns with the tax credits in particular. I think that was one of the bigger contentions with the conservatives and with the Freedom Caucus themselves. I think that there is obviously concern with even with the pre-existing conditions. It is very popular, obviously, for Americans in general. Conservatives, in the idealistic sense, have been concerned that there's just it gets too expensive. That is it really going to be able to lower premiums, and that seems to be the bigger issue right now.
You talked about the fact, Mercedes, that there's a politics of this, and whether or not this is going to help or hurt Republicans, especially it's not too soon to begin talking about the 2018 midterm election. This was a subject that came up in the debate on the House floor today between the House Speaker and the Democratic leader.
A lot of us have been waiting 7 years to cast this vote. Many of us are here because we pledged to cast this very vote, to repeal and replace Obamacare.
You're walking the plank for what? A bill that will not be accepted by the United States Senate. Why are you doing this? But you have every provision of this bill tattooed on your forehead. You will glow in the dark on this one.
Tattoos glowing in the dark. Chuck, obviously the Senate is going to dramatically change this bill, and there's a possibility they may not pass it. But how do you think this legislation is going to sit with voters?
Well, Nancy Pelosi articulated the fear that many Republicans were feeling, even if they denied it, about what the blowback will be. Obviously, this is going to activate Democrats all over the country. Mercedes alluded to the town hall phenomenon that we've been seeing, and that is a problem for Republicans in the midterms, because usually Republicans rely on relatively unexcited Democratic electorate to win midterm elections. So that's one problem right there. Look, it was risky for Democrats politically to go fiddling with health care in 2009, 2010. And they paid a price.
I was going to say, they lost more than 60 seats in 2010.
Absolutely. But now Obamacare is the new status quo. And now it's the Republicans who are fiddling with the status quo. And that's I think it's fair to say that's always the more dangerous political position to be in, because with this issue, people worry that they won't be able to pay for medical care. It's a life and death issue, and it's very easy for the other side to portray it in those terms. So these Republicans have, I don't know if they've walked the plank, but they have really gambled with this.
And we've seen over and over, once you get an entitlement, people don't want it taken away. Charles, where do you think we are in this debate over Obamacare and health care in general, both politically and in terms of the policy as evidenced in this legislation?
I think historically speaking, we're at the midpoint. We had 7 years of Obamacare, a change in expectations, and I would predict that in less than 7 years we'll be in a single-payer system. I think that's the great irony of this. Obamacare failed at every level. Politically, the Democrats were crushed over 6 years and 4 elections, where, as you say, they lost seats in the House, the Senate, the governorships, etc., largely because of Obamacare. It failed on the ground, as was pointed out earlier. The insurers are in a death spiral. The Obamacare exchanges are collapsing. You've had these exchanges, these community exchanges, completely disintegrating. But the irony is, in the end, I think Obamacare wins the day because it changed expectations. Look at the terms of the debate. Republicans are not arguing the free market anymore. They have sort of accepted the fact that the electorate sees health care as not just any commodity. It's not like purchasing a steak or a car. It's something that people now have a sense the government ought to guarantee.
That's a right.
Right. And because of that, even Republicans are trying to say, oh, we're not going to lose that many. Oh, yes, you'll be covered on if you have a pre-existing condition. The terms of debate are entirely on the grounds of the liberal argument that everybody ought to have.
So how do we get
Once that happens, you're going to end up with a single payer.
Well, I was going to say, how do you get to single payer? Are you saying that the Senate is not going to pass this repeal and replace plan?
In the short run, I think the Senate is not going to accept the House plan. It'll come up with a plan of its own. They'll go to conference. Who knows where it's going to end up, but it's going to be a rickety arrangement. It's likely that Republicans are going to suffer at the polls, and as a result of that, if that happens, you're going to get a sea change in opinion. Then there are only 2 ways to go: to a radically individualist system where the market rules, or to single payer, and the country is not going to go back to radically individualist.
Mercedes, are you as
radical thought?
Are you as pessimistic about the future of repeal and replace as your colleague here?
I think with the Senate right now, they really have to walk in a straight line. There's not a lot of movement with this legislation, in the sense that anything that you do, if you move the legislation further to the right, you're going to lose the centrists. If you move the legislation, further to the left, you're going to lose the conservatives. And what in the Senate, you lose 3 Republican senators. It's done. So I do think that we could see the Senate bill passed closer. I mean, I spoke to one health care expert who basically said it's going to be passed. We can maybe see it during Christmas time at this point, because these senators are going to want to leave their mark. And with the endless amendments coming in through the Senate, it could change the bill. I hope it doesn't, because if not, it will not pass through the Senate.
So despite the president's celebration in the Rose Garden today, we're going to be in this for a long time.
I think it's going to be for the long haul, especially when you're dealing with senators who don't have to deal with 2-year terms.
That's right. They get 6 years. All right, panel, we have to take a break here.